Rain poured heavily that evening, turning the streets of downtown Chicago into reflective rivers of gray. Streetlights flickered against the wet asphalt, casting trembling shadows over the hurried passers-by. Robert, a single dad with worn-out sneakers and a tired heart, was trudging home after a long day at the factory. His hands were rough, his clothes slightly soaked, but it wasn't the rain that weighed him down. It was the gnawing emptiness of raising his daughter, Mia, alone. Life hadn't been kind to Robert, yet he carried on with quiet dignity, believing that small acts of care were sometimes the only way to survive. It was then he noticed her, a tiny figure standing under the awning of a closed bakery, shivering in a pink jacket that had seen better days. Her wide brown eyes were glistening with tears, and she clutched a small stuffed rabbit as if it were her lifeline. Robert's instincts kicked in immediately. He approached cautiously, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" he asked softly. She nodded, the words catching in her throat. That single nod broke something inside Robert, a protective wave of empathy he couldn't ignore. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like these remind us that the world is full of hidden angels. The little girl's name was Hannah, she explained in a trembling voice, and she had wandered away from her home while chasing a stray puppy that had darted across the street. Robert's mind raced. The neighborhood was unfamiliar to her, and the streets all seemed the same in the dim glow of the rain. But despite the chaos of the evening, he felt a strange sense of clarity. He couldn't just leave her there. He took her tiny hand in his large, calloused one, feeling the trembling bones beneath her small fingers. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll find your street together." The search was anything but simple. The rain soaked through their clothes, chilling them to the bone, and the darkness made every corner seem intimidating. Hannah occasionally tugged toward familiar lampposts, and Robert followed her instincts. Along the way, he spoke to her gently, sharing stories about his own childhood, about how he had once gotten lost and how a stranger's kindness had changed his life forever. His words were small anchors in the storm of her fear, and slowly, he noticed Hannah's trembling hands relaxing, her breath steadying. Hours passed like minutes as they wandered. Every closed door, every shadowed alley seemed like a potential dead end. Yet Robert refused to give up. He felt an unspoken responsibility, a bond that transcended the moment. He remembered the promise he had made to himself when Mia was just a baby, that he would protect her, teach her to be brave, and never let fear dictate their steps. Tonight it wasn't Mia, but another child who needed that same courage. And in helping Hannah, Robert realized he was finding fragments of himself he had almost forgotten. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Hannah's face brightened. "That's it!" she exclaimed, pointing toward a small, cozy house nestled between two larger buildings. Its warm light spilled into the street like a beacon. Robert's heart surged. He hurried alongside her, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. What awaited them behind that door? Would the parents be frantic, angry, or thankful? He couldn't predict human reaction, only hope that they would see the care in his actions, the urgency in his heart. Robert knocked gently. A moment of silence followed, punctuated by the distant hum of traffic. Then, the door creaked open, and the world seemed to pause. Inside stood a woman, her face pale with worry and relief, tears brimming in her eyes as she took in the sight of Hannah, soaked but safe, hand in hand with this stranger. The room fell silent as the realization sank in. The child who had been missing was finally home, and the man who had delivered her was standing there, drenched and exhausted, yet smiling reassuringly. Hannah's mother, Margaret, rushed forward, enveloping her daughter in a tight embrace. The warmth of her gratitude was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the heroics Robert had displayed without a second thought. He felt a lump in his throat, unprepared for the tidal wave of emotion that swept through the quiet living room. The neighbors, who had gathered after hearing about the missing child, peeked curiously from windows and doorways, and their eyes widened in silent admiration. Here was a man whose simple act of compassion had bridged fear and despair, who had reminded them all that humanity still thrived in small, courageous deeds. Hannah looked up at Robert, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the soft indoor light. She whispered a small, trembling thank you, and in that moment Robert's own struggles, the sleepless nights, The lonely dinners, the financial pressures faded into insignificance. The reward wasn't applause or recognition, but the pure, unfiltered connection of having helped someone in desperate need. Before leaving, Robert offered Hannah's mother a reassuring nod. Margaret's eyes glistened as she promised to remember this kindness forever. As he stepped back into the rain, now softening to a gentle drizzle, Robert felt something shift within him. The world was still chaotic, still imperfect, but that night had reminded him that love and courage could pierce even the darkest storm. If this story touched your heart, please engage with this video. Like, share, and leave a comment. Tell us how you've experienced or witnessed unexpected acts of kindness in your life. Your words might inspire someone else today. As he walked back to his small apartment, the sound of rain softened around him, mingling with the quiet rhythm of the city. Robert held his head high, knowing that even in his ordinary life, he had been part of something extraordinary. And in the gentle echo of Hannah's gratitude, he found a reminder that one act of courage, one choice to care, could ripple far beyond the limits of our imagination. Before you leave, I want to ask you to drop a comment sharing the last time a stranger's kindness touched your heart. You never know whose day you might brighten. Robert entered his apartment dripping wet but with a newfound warmth that no rain could wash away. He looked at Mia's drawing pinned to the fridge, smiled, and realized that life, though unpredictable and sometimes unforgiving, had moments like these that made it profoundly beautiful. It was a night he would never forget, a story that would remain etched in his heart, a story of courage, compassion, and the quiet heroism that lives in all of us.